Good day, everyone. My name is Adrianna Page, and for this final assessment, I focused on a critical operational puzzle, optimizing Walmart's active store remodel process through the lens of Lean Six Sigma. Now, because I work the overnight shift, I see the heavy lifting of this remodel from a very specific vantage point on the front lines. But a process of this scale is far bigger than any single shift. Day teams, overnight crews, regular associates, temporary workers, third-party contractors, management, and everyday customers are all moving through a constantly changing retail environment. The primary question I kept coming back to is the one displayed on this slide. How much labor is being spent finding, fixing, or completely redoing work that should already be under control? That right there is our strongest quality opportunity. You see, the problem is not that the remodel never gets finished, as it always does. The real problem is that the finished result effectively hides a massive amount of searching, resorting, rework, and constant troubleshooting that happened right before we got there. The sheer scale of Walmart is exactly why this must be treated as rigorous quality process rather than just a frustrating local issue. Consider the macro level numbers for a moment. Walmart has more than 650 U.S. remodels scheduled for 2026. We operate 4,611 stores across the entire country, serve roughly 280 million customers and members globally every single week, and just reported a staggering $713.2 billion in fiscal year 2026 revenue. But let's look closer at how the scale impacts the floor. Remodel work moves through a strictly shared system. Day and overnight teams are forced to utilize the exact same work areas and the exact same materials. This means remodel employees, temporary workers, contractors, and store associates all directly impact what the very next person finds. A mistake never stays isolated with the person or the shift that created it. Instead, it ripples forward, showing up later as a missing fixture, a repeated supply surge, wasted labor for a peer, a timeline delay, or even a customer-facing safety hazard. At our scale, even the smallest repeated inefficiency breaks the bank, making it well worth measuring. This slide visualizes the operational focal point of the problem: hidden recovery labor. When management walks a finished area, it may eventually look pristine. What that final glance completely misses, however, is how much auxiliary labor was required just to recover the process before real work could even start. Take our shared fixture zone as a prime example. Digital tags, adapters, fast tracks, labels, fixtures, and carts are constantly circulating through different groups. A single shift can spend hours getting that entire area organized and highly usable, only for it to fall back into complete disorganization in less than 24 hours. This triggers a destructive loop. The next shift arrives and must immediately spend hours searching for supplies, resorting the same exact space, correcting unfinished modular work, or completely reconstructing what someone else had already checked or moved. Because the item is eventually found and the job eventually gets done, these wasteful activities become completely normalized. But from a strict lean perspective, that searching, extra motion, repeated handling, and rework represents pure labor waste that adds zero value to our customer. Now, to be absolutely clear, I'm not arguing that people don't know what the finished work should look like. The standards absolutely exist. Internally, Walmart has incredibly detailed expectations covering modular placement, fixtures, labels, material handling, completion metrics, and clean-as-you-go workspace standards. Externally, OSHA enforces strict requirements for safe walking, working surfaces, and precise injury record keeping. To round this out, I'm using ISO 9000 as an external quality management benchmark to evaluate our consistency and continual improvement, though I'm not certainly claiming this active remodel is an ISO certified environment. The reason these distinct layers matter is simple yet profound. A written expectation and a controlled process are not the same thing. A procedure can absolutely look perfect on paper, while the actual execution on the floor remains highly volatile, dependent on who is working that night, who has the right experience, where materials were randomly left, or who holds access to a specific digital system. The DMAIC framework gives us a structured, scientific way to bridge and measure that exact execution gap, rather than blindly assuming that the mere existence of a rule means that the process is working smoothly. Moving into define and measure phases, our primary objective must be to make this invisible recovery work undeniably visible to leadership. To achieve an exemplary baseline, I would explicitly avoid pulling an arbitrary target out of thin air, like demanding a random 20% improvement because we don't have a reliable baseline yet. Instead, our immediate measurement strategy must capture data on first-pass modular accuracy, actual hours lost to reorganization, specific supply search times, and the frequency of duplicate tool searches. Crucially, we must measure the clear operational gap between a true supply shortage and item that is already in the building but simply cannot be located due to poor process control. We must also track the talent drain. How often our highly experienced associates are pulled away from their core assignments to rescue a broken process elsewhere. To make this visual, a single supply search can be mapped using a spaghetti diagram, making the physical waste, walking, and backtracking impossible for management to ignore. Once these baseline metrics are established, leadership can make data-driven decisions based on where labor is actually being drained. The analyze phase is where we must separate symptoms from true root causes, because the exact same operational symptom can stem from entirely different system failures. For instance, if an associate says, "We cannot find the fixture," and it turns out that the fixture never actually arrived at the store, that is a supply chain issue. But if that fixture did arrive and is currently buried on an unmarked cart in the wrong zone, that is an internal process control failure. While the frontline complaint is identical, the solutions are worlds apart. When we analyze the broader remodel, we see this everywhere. Some rework stems from highly uneven associate experience or rushed training. Other delays are driven by weak verification processes, unclear ownership boundaries, or a total lack of exception visibility. Even timeline bottlenecks are often tied to simple procedural knowledge gaps or missing system access credentials. By leveraging cause and effect analysis and Pareto logic, we can isolate the vital few categories, creating 80% of our recovery waste. The ultimate goal here is to fix the environmental conditions creating the waste, not to figure out which shift to blame. My first major recommendation is to establish a rigorous 5S and visual management system within the shared fixture zone. The golden rule here is simple. The correct location for every single asset must be so visually obvious that a temporary worker on day one can navigate it perfectly. Digital tags, adapters, fast tracks, labels, fixture parts, specific tools, damaged materials, management holds, and approved overflow must each have an unmistakable, permanently labeled home. Moving carts must display a clear, visible status. Empty packaging must be aggressively eliminated so it doesn't mask inventory. And usable materials must never be commingled with damaged goods or items on hold. I want to stress that the objective of the 5S initiative is not aesthetic. We aren't doing this to make the room look pretty. We are doing it ruthlessly to eliminate wasted walking, searching, sorting, and double handling. To ground this in proven methodology, Aquino and his research colleagues applied 5S timed retrieval, and spaghetti mapping to a similar supply setting and successfully slashed item retrieval times by 61.7%. While I'm not blindly copy-pasting that exact percentage to Walmart, that study proves that search waste can be systemically isolated, measured, and permanently improved. Recommendations 2 through 4 are specifically designed to stop bleeding during team-to-team handoffs, ensuring that one shift stops transferring its recovery work to the next. Recommendation 2 establishes a standardized 3-step shortage verification process. An associate must check the primary location, check the single designated overflow zone, and then only record the exception. This instantly separates systemic supply chain short ships from internal store disorganization. The next recommendation introduces a strict, non-negotiable leave-it-usable standard across all shift transitions. Before logging off, teams must return excess supplies, clear packaging waste, clearly flag incomplete modulars, document exactly where active materials are staged, and explicitly identify the next owner. The final recommendation addresses capability over mere headcount. Having bodies in the building means nothing if they aren't equipped to execute. We must implement hands-on modular training, led by experienced trainers who have dedicated, protected time to instruct. Furthermore, we must enforce first-pass verification checks before a job is marked complete, and management must proactively establish backup coverage for critical digital system access. True operational readiness means ensuring that the people on the clock can actually execute what the process demands. Because our store remodel is active and ongoing right now, we have a unique opportunity. Instead of waiting for the project to wrap up and trying to simulate or reconstruct data later, we can execute our control phase right now in live, real-world store conditions. This means we get authentic, stress-tested data while the changes are actually occurring. I recommend establishing our baseline immediately and piloting these exact controls: the 5S fixture zone, the 3-step shortage verification, the leave it usable transition standards, first pass checks, and the system access readiness controls in one clearly defined sector of the remodel. We will review the data on a strict weekly cadence. Success looks like quantifiable drop in supply search times, a decrease in total recovery hours, a reduction in duplicate tool orders, and a definitive increase in first pass modular accuracy. Concurrently, we must loop the frontline associates into a feedback loop to gauge what is actually realistic on the floor. If a control mechanism is too complex or burdensome for an active remodel, the team will naturally bypass it. Our ultimate objective is to standardize the specific controls that demonstrably eliminate waste and quickly pivot away from what doesn't work. This ensures our standardization is built on hard evidence, rather than becoming another rule that looks great on paper but fails in the real world. To conclude, my absolute primary takeaway from this project is that eventual completion can no longer be used as our benchmark for quality. Factually speaking, eventually finding a missing digital tag does not erase the 45 minutes of labor an associate wasted looking for it. Eventually fixing a modular does not mean it achieved first pass quality if an entire secondary crew had to be deployed to redo the work. And eventually tracking down the one manager who holds system access doesn't mean our process was operationally ready. Lean Six Sigma provides the exact tools required to expose this hidden recovery labor and mathematically prove whether simple discipline controls can mitigate it. True remodel quality means findable supplies, correct first pass execution, highly usable shared environments, instantly visible expectations, verified leadership backup, and far less reliance on experienced associates constantly stepping in to rescue a broken process. Ultimately, a high-quality remodel process should leave any team, day or night, fully capable of walking in and out, continuing the work seamlessly without first spending hours reconstructing what happened the day before they arrived. And finally, displayed here are the academic studies, industrial benchmarks, and corporate data sheets utilized to ground this Lean Six Sigma analysis. At this time, I would like to open up the floor to any questions or feedback you may have regarding the metrics, root causes, or recommendations presented today. Thank you.